You
You
good?
good?
You're good.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Okay, we're just getting settled in now. And as people are joining, I'm going to finish up the marketing post.
Hi, everybody.
Joe is with me as well, as always. Hopefully I'm putting out the right links this time, because I know we had some chaos about 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to actually double check this time around. And there we go. All right. Yep, we are good, Joe.
We're good. We're good.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. My tea has told me I am unlimited today. Hi everyone, I'm Tim Von Rieden with Concept Cookie, and I'm joined by Joe Chico. Say hi.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about warm lighting hues, and I'm going to be taking that sheep character that you see in the advertising market post, and we're going to lay on some warmer hues to indicate a warm lighting scenario. And I want you guys to feel confident in not just like putting an overlay layer on the sheep and then doing like orange or even a color layer. I want you guys to feel confident that right from the start, rather than using like a purple for the sheep's wool, you just go in with an orange. And this almost borders more on like a storybook illustration or an animation concept art style. But I want you guys to maybe practice doing something outside of what you're used to, and hopefully you'll learn something from it that you can take in and apply it to your own style. And as always, we have a comment section on the side. Feel free to ask any questions, even if they don't relate to what I'm working on particularly. So that could be about getting a job in the field, character concept art, questions about tutorials or something you might want to see, or just questions in general. Sometimes these are more fun, but just know we do these specifically to help you guys learn. So hopefully you guys feel comfortable enough asking us questions, and we're here to answer them. All right, so before I start the stream, though, really quick, I've gotten a few new art books, and we'll start to do the reviews again soon. We're going to do something a little different this year. We're going to do like video art book reviews. The one that I want to start off with this year, because it was so strong, is the art of, Joe, could you say that? I think it's...
Eorza.
Okay, that's what I was going to say, good. It's the Final Fantasy XIV art book, and the reason I think it's so strong is because literally every page is just packed with concept art, and not only just like character, but weapon, even furniture designs. Like every aspect of what makes a good concept art book is in this book. And I reviewed Bravely Default about a year ago, and I thought that one was like superb, and I think this one might top it. So if art books is something that you're interested in, this is definitely one to look into. And the other two I will do down the line, but just know that's kind of what we're planning. And okay, so I will get started. Seems like we have enough time where people are hopefully in the room now. So I'm going to switch to my canvas here. Oops. There we go. Okay. So here's the sheep, and rather than calling them sheep for the rest of the stream, I'm just going to call him Cal, something that I've kind of been calling the sheep. So I'm going to be calling him Cal. So if you get confused on what I'm talking about, it's the sheep. Oop, that was from a previous live stream. Like hiding all my old layers so I can make room for new ones. All right, so I'm going to make this sheep a little smaller, put him in the corner. Because I'm going to actually take that initial line art that we created for the exercise, and I'm going to use it for this one as well. Let me go ahead and find that really quick.
Really fast.
Yeah.
M says, so do I watch the stream on this page or on YouTube? And I'm gonna say you can actually watch it here right now, or later on if you want to go back and rewatch the videos, they will be up on YouTube. So go check those out.
Oh, you know what? I had the wrong group chat open. I thought no one was commenting, and then it's like, oh, I have the...
You have our group chat?
Yeah. Let's see here. There it is. Okay, so here's the exercise that's going on right now. And if this is something that kind of appeals to you, or you want to kind of challenge yourself, this is a good a lighting and color challenge. So pretty much the original colors are in the top left corner here, and the challenge is to take it and apply it to a warm lighting, a cool lighting, and then a dramatic lighting. And I even saw some submissions already on Concept Cookie, and they're pretty good. I was really impressed, and it seems like you guys are actually understanding the concept behind this exercise. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, now I'm going to copy one of these outlines to what we're working on today. I'm down here. And now this sheep that's kind of flying was like a quick color test as if he was in like a desert environment. And I'm going to use some of those similar colors on it. Now really quick, I'm going to kind of show you guys how I would pick my color palettes. So normally, and I can't show you the reference that I'm using, but normally I would either go to Pinterest or Google or whatever, DeviantArt, and I would just type in like desert concept art or something along the lines of what I'm looking for that I know will have a similar color scheme. And then on a separate canvas, I'll just keep drag and dropping a bunch of reference images, and I'll literally color pick from them. So then hopefully I'll have a concise palette that I can work with. So let's see here, I'm going to make a new layer for my palettes. And when I'm specifically what I'm looking for is colors that more are on the warm side. And you might hear a lot of talk about like color and temperature while you're working in digital art, or just if you're in school or even following tutorials online. You may notice that a lot of times when you're doing character concept art, if you're doing more of like a polish or if you're doing more detailing, lighting and color play a big part in working with your character's overall feel and the mood. Well, especially for environment concept art, I would say that even plays more into it. Okay, so let's see. These are kind of the colors that I'm working with. And now, if I wanted to, I could even open my color picker, which I know you guys can't really see. But I know, okay, the warm colors are red, orange, and yellow. The cool colors are blue, purple, and green. So in my mind, I know, are these colors more on the warm side? And if not, I could add a few of my own. So like some that are a little more orange, and red's my favorite color. So I could definitely get those in there. Oops. I also don't want to go too saturated, because if you've seen my tutorials or the way I work, I try to work more on a limited saturation scale, and then I like to isolate them.
Kate QVQ says only great thing about being sick is, or the only great thing about being sick is being right on time for the live stream. Hello.
Hi.
Bummer to hear that you're sick. Hope you feel better soon.
Oops.
These sheeps are so darn cute.
Yeah, I'm liking these little fluff balls. Alright, so I'm going to make a new layer underneath of the line art layer. I'm just going to lay out sort of a base. And this is where I want you guys to not feel like you have to constrain to the outlines. And I know it probably doesn't help that I'm not a big outline person in general, but I think it's easier for you guys to create something faster when you're not so worried about it looking perfect the entire way through the process.
Diana Chris says you should do a tutorial on pelvises, as in how they work or how they connect to the torso and legs. I have to learn for class anyways, and I think it'd be awesome for others to learn something as well. Thanks.
That might be a good idea for like the next exercise. I would write that one down, Joe.
Writing it down. Pelvis.
Because I definitely could talk about like even the difference between a male and a female pelvis, and you have to look at like the bone structure and how they're just slightly varied.
Benedict wants to know, can you do a live stream for the dramatic lighting scenario next week for this exercise?
Yeah, I could totally do
Especially
that.
especially like a dark style, like a Batman comics, kind of like a noir, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. I did a test one the other day. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Because I think I agree with you where I think that would be a good one, especially with like something that is underlit. And that was the example that if I can find it. There we go. Okay. So I think this would be a great example to show you guys next week. Oop, where'd it go? There it is. So I'm going to drag it into here. So then this is a good example of like something that is underlit and then looking at the different forms of the sheep and looking at how does the form react to the light. And then if you keep it consistent, then it really reads as, oh, okay, so you can tell that the crack is emitting light from underground and it's reflecting on the sheep in a way that showcases the shape of the different forms that the sheep has. I'm going to move them over just so you guys can see all of this. Okay, I'm going to move on to now more of my light color. And something that I have been trying to do is work faster and not be so meticulous about if it's perfectly rendered everywhere. So like the sheep here took me a lot longer than it should have, where like the sheep here, or even the other example test up here, was like a 5 to 10 minute thing. And I think they all three of them relay the idea and the subject matter of the sheep. It just one took me like an hour and a half compared to 10 minutes compared to the other ones. So now, conscious of where I'm having my light source, like a straight left. It's more of like, let's see if I can quickly. It's like a this direction. And I want, or it's even more, I would say it's even more tilted than that actually. Like this. So I want to keep consistent. I know some artists will even draw a arrow or light source so that's just something that they can constantly be reminded of where the light source is coming from. And if that's something that maybe works for you, I would give it a try and just be like, maybe, okay. And then if it does work, yeah, just always draw a little arrow or some form of indication where the light's coming from.
Mike wants to know what is the best way to draw vehicles?
To draw vehicles, definitely having a very proper understanding of how vehicles work. So since I don't actually feel like I have a good grasp on how vehicle works or like the underbody of it, I would definitely have to do more research on it. Like if I was given a Twisted Metal or some kind of a car racing game, I would definitely want to study up and really know what goes on with a car so that I would feel more comfortable making concepts for it. And then I guess from there, just knowing it's going to be a lot of non-organic shapes. So a lot of hard edges. I would study hard edges and then smooth curves and kind of learning how to blend the way light reacts on the different materials that a car usually has.
This is Bill the Artist. Thanks for the subject. This is what I've been studying right now to improve my paintings. Do you use reference for each piece?
Uh, yes. I recommend always using reference. It's kind of funny. Like this is probably one that I mean, literally, this is the first time I haven't used reference in a long, long time. But it's just because I've drawn the sheep during the test so many times that I kind of know the shapes and the look that I'm going for. But while I was drawing the initial sheeps, I guess that isn't true because when I was doing the initial tests, I had like Pixar University reference up, and I had some of the art of, what is it, Blue Sky Studios. I had some of their reference images up. And it's always good to have reference because you can always pick up something from them that you can apply to your own work. That doesn't mean that you should steal it altogether, but there should be like tidbits of, oh, this is how they lit their creature or whatever it is. Let me try implementing that on my own, in this case, a sheep. And hello, Bill the artist.
Alan Brosi asks, are your brushes available to download on DeviantArt or on conceptcookie.com?
Yes, on Concept Cookie. So this brush is the standard chalk brush. And in almost every tutorial that I've done or every live stream, I try to stick to the basic brushes that you are, and I believe this is one of the free ones on Concept Cookie, because let me check yeah, it's a basic brush, so it's a free one. So you can download it right now on Concept Cookie's resource page on the site. Okay, let's take a look at this eye here. I'm gonna make it darker. And the bottom of it can be receiving that light in the iris. And this side will be probably a tad lighter because it's most likely more in shadow, but I'm still going to add a bit of it. I'm going to get rid of this arrow. I don't know why it's cutting in front of the face. There we go. Andre, you can keep firing off questions.
Alrighty. Benedict asks, do you take theme suggestions for next Monday?
Oh, for the doodle art battle? Yes. I'm pretty sure. So we have a few people that run the back end of doodle art battle, and I am one of them, but I'm pretty sure there's someone else that is doing. I think it's Gabe. I'm pretty sure Gabe is running, and Joe, the suggestion and what tutorials we're doing for each week. So yeah, if you want to suggest one, go ahead. Now for his eye, I'm going to put the color on the side here. So it's a very muted, almost gray color. And I'm going to use this base color of brown to be the foundation for the eye, and I'm going to paint the gray over that. So that way I'm still implementing the color that is kind of the theme of what we're trying to achieve here, but then I still get to have that neutral look that the cornea part of the eye has.
Jonathan Miller asks, did you find your anime to watch?
I kind of did. I watched Short Piece the other day, which is like a movie with four filmmakers, one of them being the Akira filmmaker. That was all right. I thought the last short film was pretty good. And then Samurai Flamenco, I watched a bit of that, and I thought it started off really strong. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. But yeah, I think I'm gonna try watching a different one. Probably Kill la Kill. I think I've been putting that one off for too long. And even though I think the story might be a little over the top, I think the art style alone is worth watching.
Cheyenne Ignite? I think it's Cheyenne. I have a question. Do you keep a traditional sketchbook?
Yes. And you know what? Let me see if it. All right. So I keep a sketchbook with me, and actually, I'm going to share this thing really quick. So even at the side of my desk right now, I have my sketchbook. I have just pencils. I always have at least one pencil on me wherever I go. And let's see, what can I share with you guys? Last night I was watching the new season of Face Off, and I kept working on my newest piece, which I don't know how well you guys can see that on the live stream, but I always keep a sketchbook with me, and I try to make an effort to at least draw once every day, and I think that's something really important to do. Now I'm going to go back to my main screen here, and the other thing that I wanted to share with you is there we go. So the past 2 years, I've done a lot of sketches and I compiled them over this last week. And let's see if it opens right. There we go. So I scanned every image that I wanted to include in a sketchbook that I'm going to be selling hopefully in mid-February. So if pencil traditional stuff is something that interests you and you're an art book collector or whatever it may be, just know I'm looking to hopefully get one made up in the next couple weeks and available for purchase. So yeah, I think having a traditional sketchbook is almost just as important as keeping up to the digital art standards and techniques, because I do think they apply back and forth. All right, so now I'm going to hide that line art layer, and you can see how, yeah, some of the edges might be a bit shaky, but the overall look and forms of the sheep remain, and that's because of the way we placed our lighting and our value. And I'm going to specifically look at some different areas to explain what I mean. So underneath the chin, let me grab a different color. Underneath the chin here, you can see how this cast shadow that's right here indicates that light source is coming from the light source that we initially had, and it's going to be a sharp contrast right here. That's what gives the impression of a cast shadow. Now in my shadow area, this is something that, hold on, I gotta like cough or something. I usually like to keep my shadow value pretty much consistent all the way throughout. So the thing that I used to do a lot is like if something I thought was more in shadow, I would add more shadow to it essentially. But now that I've experimented with a few different techniques, I've learned that I really like the look of keeping the shadow consistent. And it actually really showcases shadow, in my opinion, better than having a multitude of different uh, layers of like different values. So keeping it more of like a flat, almost flat shadow color, you rely more on like that ambient occlusion look, and I really like that. So it's something that I've been, I would say, more focused on doing in all my pieces and stuff.
Hello, Andrew McKinney. He says, out of curiosity, what is the most difficult or time-consuming material for you to render paint, and why do you think it is?
Foliage. I think I am trying to get over this OCD that I have with rendering everything out, and anything that includes like environment stuff, so like leaves. I found that I'm so meticulous about wanting to render every leaf. I'll literally zoom in and make sure every leaf is like attributing to the light source around it, and then I waste a lot of time. And it's even more frustrating knowing that you're wasting a lot of time, but you continue to do it and you don't know why. I think environments is something that hopefully I'll tackle in the next year, especially if I want to really make my storybook come to life. I can't not I can't like avoid learning how to do environments more correctly. So I would say foliage, and then what's the most oh, I would say something like fur. I think fur you have to be more meticulous too as well, but I have found a few brushes that I've noticed make it a lot easier, where you're not so careful with your brush strokes, where you can rely on letting the custom brush, do its job and make it look like fur. So I think there are some cases where having a specific brush for something helps out a bunch. Even with foliage, I found that having like a pre-leaf brush or a tree brush, if you keep it more loose and not so rigid, can oftentimes really help you save time and be more efficient in creating those subject matters. And hello, Andrew McKinney.
How do you design your character's clothing?
I guess I would need, let's see, if I worked on any characters recently. There's one, but I can't show you guys that yet. Okay, I can show you, let's see here. Let me open it up on my other screen to make sure. Um, no, I'm going to show you this other one. Okay. So this is a character that I did about a year ago, and it's part of my Swordplay storybook. But while I'm doing the concept stuff for it, uh, I always think about who the character is, their environment, their personality, their upbringing, and their status. And I think about how does that apply to what they're wearing and the overall style and what influence they've had to make them wear something specific. So for her, I'm trying to go for something that looks more like it would be lived near sea. She works something where it would almost insinuate that it's not pirate-ish, but it's like more of a modern style. And then I try to put my own take on what I think is cool and the influences I've had in my life to apply it to this character. So things like the really ratty big hair comes from I love the look of like Janis Joplin's hair, and I wanted to implement that as well as Natalie Dormer's face from Game of Thrones. I thought she had a really interesting facial structure with her nose and lips, so I wanted to implement that. And then things like the shiny beads down here. Oops, down here. I can't even. Oh, there we go down here, and then having color. I think color is probably the biggest influence on every piece I've ever done. So on this, I really wanted color isolation of like this gem or whatever it might be, this teal that really brings out the rest of the concept art to life because it's very earth tone based. It's very sandy, and I wanted just to have a hint of color here and then have her eyes so that they really stand out. Because if I had just a bunch of color everywhere, you would lose that effect. Now, in some cases, it actually works better because then it showcases the characters. Maybe they're more eccentric or more gaudy. But for her, I wanted to feel really toned down, really down to earth. But you can still see she has some form of style. So there's a lot that it goes into my character creations. It's harder for me to just like pop one out really quick, unless if I have like this huge surge of inspiration. But I think having put more thought into the characters, I feel more proud of what I produce because then I really feel like they're a part of me in some way, and I'm putting my artistic expression on them or my own spin on them. So it does feel more like it's uniquely me.
That's actually the her color palette is one of my favorite color palettes for female characters.
Like a sandy earth.
That like that those browns and then like that teal, you know?
Mm. I think that one is very heavily inspired from just like RPGs. Last Story was definitely one that had a similar color palette in some of their characters. But yeah, I agree. I love having very neutral everywhere and then having like a pop of color in areas.
Do you have any good sketchbook exercises you could recommend?
You know what? I actually don't know why we haven't done a traditional exercise on Concept Cookie yet. That's not a bad idea. I would say outside of Concept Cookie, there are a few on DeviantArt. Um, I think Joe, you might would probably know more than I would.
Yeah, I got a huge list of pen pen exercises that could translate to pencil. But yeah, we should definitely do a tutorial or a something along those lines for it.
I would love to do an exercise that was more traditional based. Because as much as me talking about how good it is to switch back and forth, if I'm not providing any exercises for it, I feel like then I'm being hypocritical.
I think one of the big things that uh, I feel like people often forget is that sketchbooks aren't necessarily used for like perfect drawings, you know?
Yeah, and I'm probably not the best influence for that either.
So like, especially when you're growing as an artist, sketchbooks are that's why I like I have a little tiny journal one, you know? And just throw down random ideas, and if it looks bad, then who cares? Because at least you're trying to learn something from it, you know?
hmm You know, I'm curious if I'm even including any of like my actual quick sketches in my sketchbook.
I was surprised to hear one of my friends actually they wanted to see like a bad like my bad mess up drawings because they're like they want to see progression, and maybe
Yeah.
like this is where this is how this you can make an ugly drawing, but then all of a sudden they turn the page and it's like a really good drawing, you know?
I guess I like that too. I think it's one of those things where it's like you don't want people to see your
Oh
more
yeah.
sketchy stuff. Oh, you know what? I totally do. Hold on. I was gonna say I thought I included some. If I zoom in, see here. So like these, I would say are more sketchy stuff where it's like really quick, uh, like pop of an idea, and I have just a few seconds to draw it down. So I am including some of my more sketchy. Oh, here's red. Where I agree with Joe. I think it's good to showcase what like a minute drawing looks like compared to something that would probably take more of like 8 to 10 hours, which I think I like to showcase my 8 to 10 hours a lot. But I do want to share with you guys that I do like minute sketches as well. So a sketchbook shouldn't just be for finished drawings. I agree with you, Joe.
It's Anna. Hello, Anna. She says, speaking of Doodle Art Battle, I keep missing the streams and I was hoping to find one or two on YouTube, but they're not there. Do you guys not record dab like you do the CC streams?
So I think I like to promote Doodle Art Battle a lot, but it's not actually affiliated with Concept Cookie. And for those, I think all the recordings go on the Twitch back end page. I'm not 100% positive on that, but I'm pretty sure that's where you can watch all of them. You know what? Maybe I'm going to do a double check for you really quick. Hold on, Anna. Because that's something that I want to figure out for myself. And I think eventually we're going to switch the Concept Cookie streams to Twitch as well, just because I used to have some problems with Twitch, but it's been fixed. And it was like a year and a half ago that I kind of switched from Twitch to Google Hangout. So I think I might eventually switch back just because I like a lot of the features that it has. Okay, I'm going to link in the, I don't know if I'm able to comment in the comment section. Okay, it's twitch.tv/doodleartbattle, and then you have to go to our profile, and then there's a little tab that says past broadcasts. Oh, you know what? Hold on, I can totally share the screen. All right, right here. So you go to the profile, and then under past broadcast, you'll see it here, and then it'll tell you the date, so you'll know which one to watch. Now, last week we had internet crisis, so that's why there's 3 of them. So only watch the first and the third one if you're curious. I'm going to switch back to the sheep here.
Oh, speaking of Doodle Art Battle, Benedict says, I would suggest doing a Make It Mecha. The challenge is to take something that is not mech or technical, like an animal, plant, etc., and give it a mech design. For
Yeah.
example, take the sheep and turn it into a mech.
Oh, Gabe would love that.
Gabe would love that. You wouldn't like that.
No. I mean, I might have fun with it. I feel like robots are a hit or miss for me. I either really enjoy working on it or I'm just like, I suck at doing robots. That's a good idea. I like that one. But then again, I like to throw myself in something that I'm not good at and just see what I'm able to do. Sometimes you have to push yourself limits you didn't even know you had to see what comes out.
I would love to see a robotic version of Cal.
Cal would just be all mecha. I'd like put. I kind of know what I would do. I'd probably have like and it would be little screws up all the way up. Oh yeah, that might be kind of fun. All right, so right here I'm adding some blue or this purple color, and it's uh, doing something like this is like a bounce light, but it's also meant to create more form on the subject matter in the shadows. So a lot of the times your shadow color might read very flat, which is what I was talking about earlier, but if you add just a touch of this bounce light color, it adds a subtlety that rounds it out even further, and it gives more of an idea of like, oh, okay, so there's a either blue sky or something overhead that's reflecting back on the on Cal's forms.
Anna says, thanks, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Andrew wants to know when you're cleaning up the edges, are you using an eraser or are you just painting over the background with color?
Both. I think it usually depends on like what area I'm working on. Like I should just use my eraser tool, but if I'm like in the moment, I just pick up white with my brush and I just paint, same effect. Because the background color is white, I doubt I'm ever going to change it. But if this was something for more of like a professional setting, I mean, I should be a little more aware of my techniques because then you never know if something that you do for practice could actually be used for professional. So I probably should be using the eraser tool. So I don't even want to recommend going on the fly. I want you guys to be more conscious of doing that instead. All right, so this sheep actually took me a lot shorter than I thought it would. I think I might do the next one on cool lighting because I want to keep these more simple. When you're doing concept art, you want it to be if you get the gist and if it reads like the concept that you have in your head, you don't need to render and you don't need to do detailing because that's something more for illustration. Where for concept art, you can move a little faster without it having to be perfect. Let me put that with the color palette. Okay. See here, I'll move. Maybe I'll make my canvas bigger.
Anton asks, "Who's the sheep?" Sorry I missed the start of this.
Who's the sheep? I've been naming him Cal. So this is we made a game at CG Cookie about a year and a half ago. It was called Eat Sheep, and it was like our first passion project. And we were really excited about it. And recently I love the characters, so I'm using them for a lot of testing for color palettes for like what does it look like in an environment. And I've been really inspired by the short film Dam Keeper recently, and they have a very painterly style to all their work. So it's something that I wanted to practice on subject matter that's familiar to me so I don't have to focus so much on the actual concept and I can just focus on the lighting and the application of color. All right, so I'm going to show you, see if this works. So a lot of the times when you're doing something on the fly, let's say you want to do more of a cool color palette, you rather than redrawing the sheep, which is what I did, you can literally just change a new layer mode to color. You can see what we got going on here. Actually, that was a little too heavy. Then you lay it on top. Actually, this almost looks like it's underwater or something. And you can see when I change it to hue, it kind of does the same effect. So if you wanted to do this before you go in and do more of like a detailing, like this would be, I would say, more of like a foundation of, okay, the character now, let's do a concept as if it was in like a snow level or a tundra or something where it's very frigid and cold. So now I would do the same thing. I would look for reference images that would apply to this, and then I would pull those colors from it. So really quickly, I'm going to look up just one or two reference images that I can pull from.
All right. Question from Kate: Have you ever had a problem that your drawings looked flat?
Yes, but I think I almost have the opposite problem where I over-render things to the point of where it almost ruins the piece because of how over-rendered it is. But if it's looking flat, it's often because, let me show you what I mean here. All right, so I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to change it to hue and saturation, turn the saturation all the way down. All right, so you can see when my saturation is all the way down, you can see how the form in on the first sheep read a bit stronger than the one we just did, or definitely on the one down here. But I'm relying very heavily on hue contrast and a little bit of saturation contrast. So a lot of the times people work with value contrast. And value contrast is when you have darker values near the edges and lighter values near the center of the object. So like to illustrate what I'm talking about, if you can imagine a sphere, the edges would be a darker value, and then where the light source would be hitting would be a lighter value. Now that's one way to make your your objects appear less flat. And that's probably the most common way, the most well known. And I've been experimenting a lot with doing color contrast, which is hue contrast, and saturation contrast. So there's really three different contrasts that you can put on your image or your subject matter to make them pop out. So a color contrast or a hue contrast gives like this red. And then I'm going to open up my color picker, and I know you guys can't see it, but I'm just going to slide it up to yellow. I'm going to go just a tad higher on my value scale, and then I'm going to lay it out. You can see how you still get the illusion of it coming forward or of depth and creating a value to it. But let me show you guys what happens when I turn the hue and saturation down again. So now when I turn that on, you can see how the top sphere literally almost has no range of value because I'm not relying on value contrast. I'm relying purely on hue contrast. So I think that's something that you can experiment with. If your objects are appearing more flat, turn it to grayscale because there's a good chance that you're relying on the value contrast, and they probably don't read as strong as you might think they are because the colors might be deceiving you. And that's often where I see artists get trapped into like, why does my stuff look flat? It's usually because they're not using a value range. Okay, so now back to this little sheep down here. Oh yeah, that's right. I was looking for a reference really quick. Okay.
Cedric says, "Hey, I just joined watching this live stream and I just bought the brushes because I just thought I needed them. But I also have a question. Do you have any tips for a starter like character position plus perspective? I always seem to screw up."
Yeah. So in your brush pack, you should have the. I don't know if these were ones that came separately. I could include them though. Where I have a standard three-quarter pose. Now, if you're doing concept art or character concept art in general, I would almost focus. I mean, I still think it's important to study proportions and anatomy and get that pretty much solid in your head. But when you're doing character concept art, don't feel like you have to go for like extreme poses or angles or something that is more on an illustration level. Like keep it more basic, keep their pose more basic, because then when you hand this concept off to a modeler or someone that's trying to interpret the different poses and who the character is and what they're wearing, if you have this crazy bird's eye view angle of this character doing like some crazy kick, that can oftentimes be like, okay, well this is cool, but I can't use this. So when you're doing character concept art, I would say, especially as a, let me see, what did you want to do? Character person and perspective. Um, Keep it simple. Now, if you're specifically looking to do more of like the angular illustration stuff, then you really need to study perspective, proportion, and anatomy, because knowing, like being able to break down the body into simple shapes, and then kind of relaying those shapes in space and in a dimension that you're trying to create, it helps having that knowledge pretty locked in your memory of how to work with it. Oops.
It's a good question from Tom. Tim, have you or other Concept Cookie staff ever baked a bunch of cookies and decorated with the logo?
Yes. Hold on. That's a really funny question. When I worked in house at CG Cookie, there were a few times people actually thought we were a bakery and were somewhat disappointed that we didn't have cookies for sale. But let me see if I can find this really quick. So it's funny that you asked that because I kind of thought the same thing when I first got hired there. Oh, please tell me I have it. Shoot, where is it? Oh, I know where it is. Okay, hold on. I just got to find it. So when I was first hired on, I decided to do just that. That's why I think it's funny that you're asking. Oh, there it is. Okay, let me share this on my screen. So I made a giant CG Cookie logo, and it was like my gift to Wes for hiring me on part time. And yeah, we've never made, I guess, smaller cookies personally, but there was one time when we taught a class of students, and their gift to us was they went to a bakery and they had custom CG cookies made for us. I just don't know where that photo is, but I'm sure if I asked Wes, I could find it. All right, so for this sheep, I'm imagining if there's like a light post or something over here that's emitting light, and it's showcasing on the sheep. So I'm being very careful of knowing, okay, like each of these fluffs on the sheep have more of a round aspect to them. So I have to shade them accordingly and think of it as a sphere. And that's kind of how I'm imagining laying out these, or this color, this yellowish color.
Corinna asks, how do you come up with this combination of colors? Only from reference do you combine it yourself? Only from reference do you combine it yourself from the color wheel?
Only from reference. I guess I look at the reference and I look at like where is the light source coming from? How does this light source affect the surrounding color? So like in my reference searching, I look for cold environments, and then usually when there's pops of color, it's usually a light source that's more warm, and that's why you get that contrast of the warm versus the cool, and that warm's so isolated that it really stands out. So in this case, I'm doing kind of the same thing where I know that if I have this yellow light, it's going to be a stark contrast to the blue hues that are pretty apparent in the sheep that I'm working on. So I'm looking at them, and as I lay out the yellow, I have to be conscious of, does this yellow blend with the blue? Where there are hues that don't complement each other that well. But I think this yellow does a good enough job of contrasting the blue without it being distracting or overwhelming. So I think that's why I worked with it. But if this yellow was really bad, like if I used this yellow up here, you can see how this doesn't create so much of a light source indication. It just creates a distraction, in my opinion. So I think that would be too strong. So having this yellow that's more on the weaker side, I think complements the blue nice. So it's a lot of just like testing, and I think you get to a point where you kind of know what colors will work well. So I even talked to Purple Kekleon about this for a while about when choosing color, she has like just beautiful selection of how she chooses her colors. And she gets asked all the time, how do you choose your colors? But she always tries to tell him, I just go. There isn't much thought process behind it because she's experimented and tested so much in her past that it really just comes naturally now. And I think that's what I try recommending to artists as well, just literally test the waters and see what works. That's why this exercise is a great one for those that are interested in color and light, because then you have three different sheet models where you're testing pretty, I would say, contrasting lighting scenarios, and then just seeing for yourself, oh, okay, this color works really well to emit more of like a cooler temperature, and or oh, this color works horribly with this color. I'll never do this color combination again. And you just find things out like that about what works and what doesn't. Now, here's a good example of, since we copied the sheep from the desert sheep, you can see how the shadow underneath the chin is a bit too heavy, because if our light source is coming more from the side, where the desert one was more overhead, I'm going to tighten up the shadow that is being cast on the head. And maybe even have just a glimmer of the light even poke around here.
Charles Harris asks, what do you think was the best art advice you have ever been given?
Oh my god. Huh. I would say, okay, I'm going to answer this in two ways. One was what motivated me more to continue drawing, and it was someone being so hard on me and really critiquing me to a point where I was like breaking. and I was so angry with them. And it was my art teacher in high school, and they literally even sent me my parents a message or an email saying how I'm just a photocopy machine. I'm not a real artist, and it legit pissed me off. And I remember just being so inspired that I wanted to prove them wrong. That over like the next year, I worked harder than I've ever worked, and I wanted just to prove them wrong. And I think sometimes having that motivation is good, but I don't think it came from a very good place because I was just angry. But then the teacher ended up being my favorite teacher I've ever had in my life because then after that email was sent, I don't know if she knew this, and I didn't know if she knew that if she provoked me enough, it would inspire me. But then that year after, she worked with me like every other day, or I would even say every day, on really focusing in on what my strengths are and using those to my advantage. So I don't know. Sometimes I think she tricked me into getting angry, and that's what motivated me. But I think having a reason to make art is so important because a lot of artists you'll see when they're not motivated, they just don't produce anything, or they'll just recycle their own skill level. When there's no drive to get better, it's not going to happen. So you really have to have some self motivation there. Now, okay, so what's the best art advice I've ever been given? Whew, I would say hmm, I don't know if I have a favorite overall, but I think one that comes to mind that's been recent is having two colors come up right next to each other to create a form and contrast. So like, oh, my mailman's here. Hi. They're so nice. All right. So you can see how when I have these two colors butt up right against each other, before I'd be so meticulous about like blending even a little bit to have some kind of a shading. And I think just having someone be like, no, just have it be a solid line that gives it that contrast, and don't worry about having it be pillow shaded out. Just trust that it will work, and it gives the impression of form through contrast. Ever since then, I've been using it all over the place. Like even in the sheep, like you can see how like in the shadow where the head is next to the body. Before I would have like even added more shadow here, but I don't do that anymore. I just let it kind of stand alone and let the strength of just my placement of lighting speak for itself. So I think that was something recently that has been really good advice that I follow a lot. All right, now same with the head here. Since the light source is coming from that side, I want to make this side of the head a bit more in the shadow. Okay.
Charmaine, oh, sorry.
No, you go. You go. I'm done.
Okay. Charmaine James asks, how do you battle procrastination and art block?
Uh, this is a good question. I am surrounded by a lot of my friends, and we talk about stuff like this all the time. And I think the best way to get over procrastination is to remind yourself just to do it. Just do the work. I think I got so frustrated with some of my friends that always talk about wanting to do work that sometimes I can come off almost blunt on how I'm just like, just stop talking about it. Just do it. Just do it. And I think people look for a reason or a motivation for having to do it, but literally the motivation just should be self satisfaction of I'm getting work done. I think that's the biggest way to get over procrastination is by not procrastinating. Just don't do it. Don't look for a reason why you don't need to procrastinate. Just don't. And to battle art block, now this is something that I do understand a little more because there are some days where I'm just like not feeling it at all. Like I just feel like it's taking me forever to produce anything, and what I am producing isn't that great. Ooh, that looks interesting. Um, So in that regard, just know that it usually won't be every day. Like for me, it's usually like once every other week where I'm kind of feeling like a weird art jam, uh, or even like once a month. I would say is more normal. But when you have those days, just get through the day. Know that it's it's just a temporary thing, and that tomorrow give your best shot at it again. I think the worst thing you can do is get frustrated and be like, well, I'm horrible at art. I got lucky my last art piece, and that'll never happen again. But I think it's good to take breaks. And like, if you are having an art block day, go watch a movie or watch something artistic or do something that is for yourself. Go take a walk, something. Get your mind off of it, and then come back to it later with a fresh mind, or even the next day. I often find that if you sleep it off, it usually works the best. That's more of my perspective, but it might work for you too.
Yeah, to complement what you were saying, there was many months where I would be spending close to 8 to 10 hours a day just going straight through and drawing. And I think it was 6 months down the road, I just like hit that wall so hard, I just couldn't function. Like my art, I couldn't. I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know what's going on. It was cool because I got to look back and go, whoa, I grew this much and this fast, but I hit a wall for about a good solid month, and I just didn't want to do art, and that's not a good thing. I would say now I'm doing probably like a painting a day, uh, but I'm not spending a ton of time on it. I'm just trying to study and and do the painting. I think that's helping to balance out the pressure of uh, of trying to see immediate results, and I'm not there's no block there because it's just doing something.
Mhm. All right, so really quick, I'm readjusting the highlight on the eye because you can see in the desert one, the light source was coming more from overhead, so the highlight on the eye are supposed to indicate that. But for this one, since the light source is kind of coming from the side, I want to indicate where that light source is coming from even the direction and placement of lighting on the iris, or on the eyeball, I should say, not specifically on the iris. So just a tad lower. That. Okay, next question.
I'm always confused about lighting, especially regarding the hair, since hair is complicated components for me for is a complicated component for me. Any tips?
Yeah, so hair is definitely one of the hardest things to tackle, I think, especially in character concept art. This is one that I think gets asked a lot. When you're doing hair, if you can imagine it like a strip, well, one, break it into shapes and it'll make it a lot easier. But now, let's see here, let me quickly. Mhm. All right, so one, know where your light source is coming from, and then two, reflect that in the way that your hair is curving, and you'll see me. Oh, it's such a quick strand of hair here. You'll see the fluidity in the lighting on hair. So you want to create a nice solid base first, and then, or at least the way that I usually create my hair, and then build up the light source on top, still keeping it in those different shapes, but then having areas, so like I know this area and this area will be reflecting the highlight. And making, if it's more of a shiny gloss hair, adding those highlights down the line. Same with down here. Now, obviously, this is a really quick example, but if you can imagine if I spent more time on it and I really shaped it out, then you can really look at the way hair reflects light, and then how you can add color to it. So usually I have it a little more saturated where the light source is coming from. That's how I lay out. Like for brown hair, I'd use more of a lighter brown near the highlighted areas, and then a darker brown in the shadow areas. Stuff like that. Because then when you get down into the detailing part, then you make your brush size smaller, and then you can work on like smaller clumps of hair. This is kind of hard to see on this map, but then I would work from there and even have like some strands coming out at the edge. Yeah, hair can definitely be a tough one when you're doing lighting, but this is a great example of where using reference is the best case scenario. And there's a bunch of hair reference online, so if you look in the right places, you'll definitely be able to find it. Ooh. Okay, it's about 3 o'clock now. I actually have time to do another one. So we're going to do one more with the stream. I didn't realize that this would be a lot faster. So is there any one that you guys want to see, like a specific lighting scenario? And I will go ahead and try to create it in this last half hour we got here.
I think there was the one that they wanted to see next week was the dramatic lighting one.
I could do a dramatic light. I guess, should I just do the cave one again? Let me,
Uh,
but like in this pose.
you want to do one that's uh, like noir, like noir comic books,
Yeah,
like
it's like
that.
cast shadows.
Yeah, like super hardcore black and white.
I could
Maybe
do
like
that.
a
Okay.
Sin City one.
Sin City one. Some blood splatter on his face.
Yeah, exactly.
Just have like he just killed a man. He
Oh
feels
my
no regret.
That face. That face is the face of pure evil.
Right. All right, yeah, I can do a dramatic lighting one. And we'll
Can
do it with heavy cast shadow. I think I have an idea of what I want to do.
can you give me your best impersonation of a gangster
Is
from like
someone asking that?
no, I'm asking you from like the 1950s.
Oh, no. God, no. I'm probably the worst entertainer ever. I can draw. I can do that, but God, don't have me on the spotlight for anything else.
Be like, yeah, see, yeah.
See, you can do it. You do the Cal's gangster voice.
She walked into the office
That's his voice. It's pretty good.
asking asking to see if there are any more sheep around. Cause she wanted to get us a good night's sleep, you see.
Good night, sheep, you see.
Oh,
Oh, I see what I did there. I have moments of entertainment, I guess.
you just be the writer and I'll be the voice actor. How's
I'll
that
be the
sound?
writer and producer, you be the actor. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so what I'm going to do with the sheep is I'm going to have imagine if he was like locked in a box or something and or in a closed room and the gates are closing on him. And all you see is like the last glimmer of light on his face. So we'll see if I can do this the way that I'm imagining it in my head right now.
Benedict asks or says and then asks, "You like using the soft edge brush? If my memory is correct, have you ever tried limiting yourself to a hard edge brush and try to see if it works out?"
Yes, actually, that's funny that you're asking that. That's literally one of the assignments I give to my workshop students is on half, it's a crab assignment, and on half the crab, they're only allowed to use a soft edge, and on the other half, they're only allowed to use the hard edge. And the goal is to try to make both sides look identical without me being able to identify which side is which. So it's a good challenge in seeing like how do I push the tools that I've been given as an artist to create something and not feel limited by my tool set. And then you learn a lot about like, okay, in this area a hard edge works better, and in this area a soft edge works better. And I think once you carry enough of those in your head, you start to realize, okay, when you're working on an actual piece, like an area around the eyeball, a hard edge would work better. When I'm doing hair, a soft edge works better. And it's funny that you asked that because yeah, I tested myself a lot in college trying to figure out which brush I like the best, and I think it's a great test that every younger artist should definitely do on themselves.
Kate QVQ asks, "Do you prefer to listen to music while drawing, or do you think it's more of an interruption?"
I'm not even interrupted by having a movie on in the background. I think I'm one of those people that just need background noise of any kind, and uh, music is usually my go-to, and I try to match the music to whatever I'm working on. So like right now, if I was working on this Eat Sheep thing, I would probably listen to like I would Google Disney piano collection and just listen to something like that, or something that's more animated and. Um, but I usually like to listen to like covers of it, usually piano or cello and violin. I would say I'm more of an orchestrated nut, but yeah, definitely for characters, I love to match the music to the character, and even music that sometimes I'm not that fond of. I think it's good to get into that mindset so I can understand the character that I'm creating. If it's really something that, like, for me, I'm not a big fan of heavy metal or something along those lines. But if I'm doing a character that I think reads very much as like that's their personality, I'll listen to that type of music and get influenced by it.
Anna asks, how do you recommend combining colors for scenes where both cool and warm lighting would be present? Like, say, mostly shadow scenes with isolated warm lighting, like those cast by sunlight through trees or similar.
That's a great question because I'm going to be doing something very similar to that on this picture. So I'm going to have the lighting that's reaching on his face be more warm, but then all the shadow area, so like the area above and below the lighting, will be cool. So I'll show you guys in just a second. I'm just trying to get a more solid foundation on this lighting
He
first, and
looked
then I'll go into the shadow area.
he looked like he was in a hamburger
Ah!
when you drew that for a second.
I don't know if you've ever had a cream puff, but they're pretty popular in Wisconsin. That's what this reminds me of right now. Just one big cream puff.
Anxiety CM asks, do you think you could do a video or give advice on getting used to Intuos or similar? I can't seem to get used to it and I can't afford a Cintiq.
Getting used to an Intuos, like a Wacom or a Cintiq.
I believe that they mean just getting used to an Intuos because they can't afford a Cintiq.
Oh, just on like a normal tablet? Oh yeah, I definitely think, and I say this a lot when being introduced to a tablet, there's like a 3 month hump that you have to get over, and it's that usually that transition of not only going from traditional to digital, but also learning a new software. So that's why it kind of sucks when you're just getting started in digital art, because like you're getting hit with a double whammy right from the get-go. Because now you're not even looking at where you're drawing anymore. You have to look at a screen and then train your hand-eye coordination to match up what you used to do just looking at the image. So that kind of sucks. And then two, Photoshop, if that's your preference of software, or even a lot of digital softwares, can just feel very overwhelming. Because it's like, what are all these menus up here? What are they doing? And I know you guys can't see my screen, but like I have a bunch of different windows open. It's overwhelming. But I think breaking it down piece by piece, and on the Getting Started series on Concept Cookie, it's a free series. There's one specifically about the interface, and I think maybe you should check that one out. And I think just knowing that there's like a 3 month hump that you have to get over, hopefully that'll encourage you to be like, okay, I know I'm frustrated, but this is like my first month of learning a digital art, and I know that Tim said 3 month hump. You can blame me if it still doesn't work. How about that? Because that's how confident I feel, and it really does take a 3 month time period to just get used to using a tablet and practice every day. If you're not practicing every day, then the 3 month hump rule kind of goes out the window.
It was actually interesting when I was in college. I had a professor who we weren't, for one of the assignments in my life drawing class, we weren't allowed to look at our canvas. We had to just look at what we were drawing and just draw it as if like you know and it reads really really similar to how an Intuos works.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it was just one of those things where you could always probably apply it to that. It's just a very very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
Dominic Trant says hello from California.
Hello from Wisconsin.
It's cold in Illinois.
It's freezing in Wisconsin.
Give us your warmth.
Actually, I'm one of those weirdos that like the winter, so I don't want your warmth. Give it back.
Charles Harris asks, do you think learning traditional painting is necessary to become a successful digital painter?
No, but I definitely think it helps. I think there's a lot that you can learn through traditional painting that you can apply to digital art that if you just go straight into digital art, you might not learn or even as quickly. But no, do I think it's necessary? No. Because I mean, I would consider myself a digital artist, and I never did traditional painting really. I mean, I used acrylics in high school, but it was more just like high school assignments that I didn't really know what I was doing. To be completely honest.
Just like taking your hand and slapping it on the paper.
Did it my forehead and just like hitting it really hard. All right, so really quick, I'm gonna showcase what I meant. So now the area in the center has more of a warm light to it, and if I really wanted to, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna use an overlay layer, and I'm gonna use it just on the edge of the light. Now this is a technique that I learned last year with doing cast shadows, and usually there's like a hint of saturation right where the cast shadow and the light butt up against each other. I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna go in and more of my cool lighting on the rest of the sheep. All right, so now from here, I'm gonna grab this purple color that we were using earlier. I'm gonna apply it to the rest of the sheep. So now, oops. So it's still indicating that the sheep is in shadow, but I think something that you should try doing is if it's in shadow, don't just feel like you have to make it dark and you have to add black. Try adding a subtle bounce light to it, and I usually stick with like a purple or a blue just because then it indicates shadow easier to the viewer. And I'm going to apply it to the sheep here. But I'm going to keep it more consistent, not like any general light source. Because if it was more of a direct light source, the lighting would be a bit harsher. But if I keep it more subtle, you'll see how it reads as still in shadow. And Joe, as I'm doing this, if you want to just rapid fire questions.
How old are you?
I am 25 years old.
What's your favorite color?
Red. That was the easiest rapid fire section I've ever had to do in my life.
What is your quest?
To make an illustrated novel.
Um, I don't know how to pronounce this person's name because it's in Russian.
Cool.
I wonder if I can Google translate that name.
Well, if it comes up as like corn pig, you know that it's not probably their name. Sometimes Google Translate isn't the most accurate.
Apparently it says Yasya.
Okay.
Greetings from Ukraine.
Greetings from Wisconsin.
I hear often that the more colors you put into a picture, the better it will be. For example, if you draw the skin, throw there as many colors as you can in, like reds, blues, greens, yellows.
God, you almost made me like shiver as you said that. I, I I agree. Okay, for skin, I do agree it's better to have a multitude of colors. But just like I was showing with the Christina picture earlier, I think it's better to have a understanding of color and how it works to harmonize your piece. So yeah, adding more colors will add more to it, but you don't want it to become more of a distraction or more of an eyesore because you see a lot of pieces where they just like throw a whole throw up of color and it's so confusing and misleading for the viewer. It almost becomes like it ruins the concept overall. But I will say, when you're doing things like skin, definitely have more colors than you would initially think. So there are blue hues. Knowing where to place your pinks and reds are important. The color regions of the face. But just know, when using color, try to be a little more limiting on yourself, and then you can add to it once you have a better understanding of color.
Apparently, the right pronunciation was Yasuko.
Oh,
Yasuko.
Yasiko.
Um, Tom H asks, how would you approach doing gestures on a tablet? I can do pretty decent gestures traditionally, but when I try to do them on a tablet, they look strange or incorrect.
I'm kind of in the same boat with you, where I do find it easier to do traditional gestures. But I guess when you're doing it on a computer, the best thing you can do is keep it more like fluid, so have more curves. Because I think oftentimes with digital art, we resort to like straight lines and then we start like chicken scratching. So I find if you have like a separate layer where you keep it more fluid and like you aren't so concerned with how perfect it looks, and then in your next layer, then you can more zoom in and be like, okay, if this was the leg, here's the knee, and like work off of your. So don't be too tight with your your gestures.
Vladimir says, hello from Russia. Thank you for the stream.
Hello from Wisconsin. You are welcome for the stream.
And then Kate says, greetings to the person from Ukraine for the or greetings to person from Ukraine from person from Poland.
This is so cool that we have so many people around the world watching the stream.
Isn't it like
Or sorry, you go.
isn't it like super late there?
I believe so. Or wait, because Kieran's in Australia and he would be in the future. So I guess depending on where Ukraine and Russia are in comparison to Russia, it's either really early or it's like just barely twilight time. Either like 3 a.m. or 6 a.m. I assume. I guess why don't we just ask them? What time is it for you guys? All right, but you can see as I zoomed in here, you can see the contrast of warm, or let me choose a obnoxious color to point this out. Okay, so you can see how I have very cool colors almost butt up right against these very warm colors and then go right back into the cool color palette. But when you look at this, it doesn't look confusing, or hopefully it doesn't look like he's wearing a headband across his eyes, because it should read as if it's a light source hitting it. Now I will say, if I wanted to push this a little further, I think I would have the light source a tad stronger. So hold on, maybe I guess give me some render time here and I'll answer more questions. Or even comments. Is there any funny ones out there?
Anna says, it's always cold in Wisconsin, Tim. My husband thinks you're crazy for moving up there because he just moved away from there a year and a half ago.
um, so I actually love Wisconsin. All my family's here, and I have a really big family. More or less, there's like 70 of us up here, and it's funny because none of them are in the art field or have anything related to the art field. So when I'm around them, I really can just be comfortable with them because they don't treat me any different, and they don't they don't even understand what I do. My mom for a while was telling them that I do stuff like Shrek, and that's actually not at all what I do. But for Wisconsin, I like having the seasons. I like having the fall, and in winter I like to snowboard. So I like to do things outdoors. But I would say now that I'm older, it doesn't seem like I do much anymore outside. But as a kid, I loved it, and I think it makes people more patient being in I don't want to say I was gonna say a crappy environment, but in an environment that's not so pleasurable. I think it makes you appreciate the summertime a lot more. Now, this is just coming from my own perspective. I don't know. Maybe like in California, they really do appreciate sun time all the time. But I think just in Wisconsin, having those months that are kind of bitter cold, and then when summer comes, it's like a release, and everyone is uh, happy and they want to be outside, and you see everyone walking and playing outdoor sports. But I love Wisconsin, but I think I'm just biased, so I don't know.
Apparently it's 10 p.m. in Germany, and then it's uh, Russia, or in Ukraine it's 23:20, so 11:20.
Oh, I was off. I'm glad you guys are staying up late with us here.
Or are these people just waking up? Is this like, I wonder if they're the night owls.
Well, if you're like me, I usually go to bed around 2 or 3 a.m. every night, so I definitely understand staying up till this time to watch the stream because it's not even close to your bedtime yet. You got a few hours still. All right,
Where do
there we
you,
go.
oh,
So
sorry.
here, oh sorry, no, you go first. Let's keep.
Uh, where do you buy your art pencils from?
Good question. So I guess hold on really quick. All right. So these are the ones that I usually always keep with me. But three of them are a point 0.5 milliliter, and if you watch the tutorial I have on Concept Cookie, it's a free one. But these are usually the my staples. I used to use a point 0.7, and I'll usually use this for quicker sketches, but for things that are more detailed, I try to do a point 0.5. And these you can find most everywhere. You'll be surprised where you won't be able to find them. Like you would think an Office Max would have it, but I found that some of them don't carry it. The smallest they'll go to is point 0.7. So these are more common. These, if you go to like an art store or a hobby store, they should have point 0.5. Now, the one that I had to find specifically was this, which is a point 0.3 milliliter. I don't know if you can see. Let me put it in front of the microphone. Oh, it won't focus. But it's a super small milliliter pencil. This one I had to specifically drive to an art store that's like an hour away. But then I bought one for my little cousin because he thought it was so cool. He was like, "Oh, could you get me one?" So I was like, "Fine." But I ordered it online, and these usually can cost like $10. But you can definitely find these online on Amazon, and that's where I'd recommend getting your pencils. All right, I'll switch back.
Really fast. Vladimir says, "Well, I was about to go to sleep. It's uh, 12:23 a.m. Thursday in Russia."
12:23. Oh, well, thank you for staying up late.
So it's tomorrow. So they're from the future.
Like cute.
What happens to me today, Vladimir? I need to know. Jake Scott asks, "What has more job security, animation or game design? I know this career path is tough, but humor me."
So since I personally got hired when I was just out of school, I actually never was in a game or animation career field. So I have never been in the industry of either. But just from the friends that I talked to and knowing some people that are in those fields, I would say the animation ones seem more stable. Just because with game art, if a game production takes 3 years and they usually only have one or maybe two titles on the development line, concept art is like the first 6 months, usually, period. And then after that, unless if you have multiple abilities, usually you're either let go or, and like with the idea that you'll be brought back on when the next project starts, or they'll switch you to project number two right away. But for animation, since especially like if you look at DreamWorks, who now produces like 3 movies a year, there's usually a new project happening every 6 months, like a new one starting up, or even like every 4 months, I think it is now. And as a concept artist, you'll be jumping from project to project, and you'll usually only see the initial stage to about halfway, and then maybe you'll be brought back in for some of the later development times if there was like a script change or something. But just from the way that I've seen it, I just feel like there is more security in animation. All right, I'm gonna quickly organize these sheep. And then for the last 4 minutes, let's just try to get through as many questions as we can.
All right. Eric Desu says, I'm struggling with perspective in terms of depth and scale. Do you have any tips on that?
So that's something that I never really practice on myself. I think if you're struggling with it, I would do a lot of studies, look online for specific, I don't want to say guides, but like find artists that do understand it really well and look for their breakdowns of how they create it. So I know if you're doing like 2 point or 3 points perspective, like understanding the lines, but I don't want you to overemphasize on that because I want you guys to at least practice getting used to doing it without having the need of those lines. But I think at least doing it once or twice, like I think I did it 3 times in college, and it should resonate with you. If it's not resonating with you, I think then you really need to focus on having it resonate with you because then those lines should just always be in the back of your head. And then when you're drawing, you should have some form of perspective on your pieces. But in terms of depth, uh, if you think of anything on a plane, let me really quickly. There, that was too big. This is my plane. And if you're doing a character or something, you really want to be able to break that character down into simple shapes and then lay those shapes like a cylinder would be the leg, another cylinder. And then if you wanted something that was coming more at you, really imagine those cylinders or whatever it may be and how those shapes work on your perspective plane. And you want to get to a point where you don't need to draw perspective planes and like everything is just it clicks for you and you know where the things should be placed, but that can just take time and practice. So just know it won't come quickly, but it'll come over time. Is that it?
Oh, no. Uh, in regards to surface material lighting or uneven space, how do you make it more realistic without using photo textures?
Regards to surface material lighting on uneven space? What do they mean?
I'm guessing they mean like if an object were to be bumpy.
Oh, like on an irregular surface?
Hmm.
Okay, so then for smooth surfaces, you want to represent them in almost gradients, and the way that you blend and smooth it will give the impression of it being a smooth surface. But when you're doing something that's more bumpy, I do recommend trying to use a texture brush of some sort. Let me think if I've done anything recently that I can show you. Yes. Okay, give me 1 second, I'll find it. But like doing things like leather and stuff, it does help having specific brushes or even bringing in photos and overlaying it or something. But I don't want you guys to feel like you have to rely on that. So maybe do a few practice studies where you do the best interpretation that you can without using a brush or a photo and see how close you can get it because then when you do use a brush or a photo, you understand the properties of how you created it and it becomes something where you're not relying on it. It just is, you're becoming faster. It's more efficient too. All right, here we go. Let me make this bigger. It's like 2 years ago, I did a leather study, and for like the entire thing, I was doing no photo referencing or no photo touch up, and then at the very end, that's when I overlaid my texture, and it looked so much better than it did before. And I think it was just me being able to study leather and how those different creases reflect light or how just some areas need to be lighter, but I don't want it to represent a light source. I just want it to look like the leather was more worn in areas. So I think having that that study of leather helped me to feel comfortable then when I laid in my texture, since I feel like I have an understanding of it more, that I'm able to implement it without feeling like I'm using a texture or brush as a crutch.
Next question is picking the colors from the reference cheating. I am partially colorblind artist and I use the reference to keep my color balances in check.
No, not at all. I actually like despise when people think picking color from your reference photo is cheating. It's literally what almost every top artist does in the industry. So if it is cheating, the only thing it's cheating is yourself. So no, you are definitely on the right path.
Diana Chris says, speaking of the Dam Keeper, it looks amazing, but do you happen to know when and where it's coming out?
Yes. Um, so I am so psycho about the Dam Keeper because I think it looks amazing that I even bothered them. I've been pestering them about when it will come out. Can I pay them to watch it? Blah, blah, blah. But they have calmed me down and they've been telling me sometime in February it should come out as a wide release, and that uh, they're very thankful that they have very big fans. They just want them to wait a little longer so they can have a proper release of it.
Chicago Storm 88 says, hi, I remember you experimenting with styles. Lately, I've been drawing a lot of chibis to get away from my norm and find it relaxing. Now I'm drawing a lot, and I feel like I'm going through too many phases slash styles. Is there a better way to control it?
Um, this is a good question that I don't know if I'm able to answer because I'm always, I feel like jumping from style to style. Like this style, I don't know if this is particularly my style. And I was talking to Joe about this like 2 weeks ago where I always feel like I'm finding something new that I can add to what I liked creating, and I'm constantly jumping between things. So like what you're saying with let me see if I can find it really quick about like doing chibi art, and it is very relaxing for me. Oh, there it is. But so like here, everything is very smooth, and I render it to the point of it almost being over rendered. But I like having the look of it being completely smooth with very little brushstrokes being seen, and where they are seen, it's planned. It's something that it wasn't accidental. But the problem with this is it takes me forever, and I often find myself getting frustrated at how much time I'm taking on pieces because I don't even know if that's the style I want to go for. And then I can chalk it up as a learning experience, yes, but then it almost is confusing me on what my style is because then I'll do something like these sheep and I really like it, and I'm thinking, oh well, maybe I do need to do something that's more quick, and maybe that will end up being my style. But then I end up doing something like, I'm just gonna be quick grabbing here, my Earth Elemental that I did last year, and I really like the way that turned out. But then that's like the opposite, where there's very little texture seen and it's a lot of blending and smoothing. And then I go on for that for a while, and then I'll do something like this, where it's very heavy in its smoothing, but if you look closer, there's a lot of texture, there's a lot of brush strokes that are visible. So I guess my best advice with experimenting in styles is just know it's going to probably happen for years. And I hope eventually I'll find one style that I feel very confident in, and that'll be like my main style, but I still want to feel comfortable enough to be like, that doesn't mean I have to restrict myself to only doing that style from this point forward. I'll probably always do smooth shading on Summer Guard, and on Summer Guard I'll always do more of a texture, things like the sheep. And I think when you limit yourself, you're limiting yourself as an artist. But it is good to kind of figure out what you like to do in your pieces, but it's also good to understand that you don't need to just stick to one thing, and that's the only thing you can do for the rest of your art career. Yeah, my best advice would be not to control it and just let it fly free.
Yeah, what is it? It's do what you love to do or what makes you happy,
Hmm.
and then
It's like at that particular time, whatever piece it might be, don't think of what am I supposed to do. Think of what do I want to do.
Dominic Chan says, any ideas what the next stream will be on? CT Chrysler guest appearance possibly? Question mark.
That would be wonderful, but I don't think he'll be on the next live stream. I will say though, we are planning out our February live streams right now, and I guess since you guys are here, I could spoil maybe some of them that confirmed with us. Let me just double check my base camp to make sure I'm not just puffing smoke here. Okay, so for sure we have. All right, so I will have Psychra again. He's been with 2 past live streams with me, and he's a great tutorial author as well. Let's see here. We got McLean Kenry. If you don't know who he is, he did 2 of the tutorials on Cookie, the Pug Warrior. If you guys are familiar with the tutorials we have on Cookie, but he's a great artist and is someone I haven't live streamed with before, so that will be a fun one. And the third one, Jonathan Hamilton, and he has also done a tutorial for us, and I've live streamed with him. I'm actually, I have a lot in common with them. We're pretty good friends. And if you don't know who he is, he did on DeviantArt. Oh God, I don't even know how to spell this correctly. I'm gonna have to look this one up.
A afterwards?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I know there's an A in this somewhere. Tsuaii. So if you look this name up, you'll probably instantly recognize his work as something that you've seen in the past. And then the last artist we don't have confirmed yet, so I can't say who it is because we don't know for sure. But definitely know that we're looking for a 4th kind of well-known artist to join on our February streams, and that will start the first week of February. So not next week, but the week after will be our first February stream. So stay tuned for that.
Bedna S says $10 for 1 pencil. That's pretty expensive. The .3 pencil costs 3 to 5 years depending on the maker and is available everywhere.
Oh, really? I don't know. Maybe it's an American thing for it to be, or maybe you know what? Maybe I'm just not looking in the right spot.
Eat sheep Windows Phone. Just saying.
Wait, what?
I think this person wants Eat Sheep to not just be on the iPad.
Oh, yeah. Who knows? Maybe something in the future will arise. Are all the good questions here?
There's a couple more questions.
All right, let me do my quick pass here. Hello, everyone in Germany. Super Sonic Monday. I would love to do a Sonic fan art. Although, admittedly, I'd probably do Knuckles. He's my favorite. Thank you, Benedict. So someone's asking about color theory. Just know that I would keep everything more desaturated, or maybe try something where it's more desaturated. And then in areas that you want the viewer to look at specifically, that's where you should add saturation. And that's called saturation contrast. And that's where, like when you paint the skin, keep it more on areas that are more colorful. So like usually the areas on the cheek or like on the nose, on the elbows, usually you can have some red overlays, which will definitely make it a tad saturated or more saturated. But I wouldn't go overboard with that for skin. Who is my best and worst client? Best client is CG Cookie by far. And also, actually, I just got hired by my favorite German pianist, and his name is Newtiful. I guess I can do a quick glimpse for you guys. I'm working on this one for him for his recent album cover, and he's been like my best client, I think, ever. He's just been really cooperative, helpful, and that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. And worst client is, I'm not going to say the name or their company, but I will say when I was in school, I was promised potential and royalties off of an iOS game that was made. And it was made, and I put in at least 100 to 150 hours of work, and I got paid $100, and that was it. And it was frustrating at the time, but now looking back, I definitely learned a lot. I learned how to animate in Photoshop, which I never did before, and a lot of it was almost pixel art. So I got to have fun working with pixel stuff. And yeah, hello, Alabama. Yes, the Okami book is great, and I'm happy to get those art book reviews pumping out again on Concept Cookie. Art books are like the one real life treasure I think I have in the world. Uh, and the ones that someone Charles Harris is asking, are there any books that you recommend that really helped you? There's an art book by Savardi Giovanni, I think is. God, I hope I'm saying that right. But he has an anatomy book that I always talk about that I love. Color and Light by James Gurney. The Bravely Default book, or even this Final Fantasy 14 book, has been really amazing. But there's a bunch of books that I really think have been inspiring in some way. Oh man, you guys are so good with questions now. Joe, do you and I have our own portfolio websites? And if so, do we host them on another site or do we host them ourselves?
Do you have a portfolio site?
I do not. When I graduated school, I did, and my sister-in-law built it for me, and I took it over after. But then once I realized that it's a lot more efficient to get on a site that has a higher amount of traffic, so something like Facebook or DeviantArt, I switched over. So now, like my portfolio site, I guess where I link people to is either my Facebook or my DeviantArt page. But nowadays I could even direct them to my Tumblr, Instagram. Probably I would still do my Facebook or DeviantArt first, but there is no real need for an official website unless if you're like a top professional artist that maybe doesn't post all their art all the time, or they're not allowed to based on the restrictions of the company. But no, I do not have a personal website anymore. Joe?
I was gonna say I have a Wix. I use a Wix one, and then you can buy the professional version where they don't have like their ads and stuff on it. But as far as like if you're going out for a job interview, yes, it's gonna look a lot better to have your own website and to make sure that you're managing it. But at the same time, a lot of artists out there, you know, when we look for artists, we look at their DeviantArts, we look at their Tumblrs.
Hmm.
So I would
I don't need
say,
any like flashy presentation, I don't think.
yeah.
Show us your art. That's all we want to see. That's all the hire people that will hire you will want to see too. Okay, yeah, I think I just did my scroll through all the questions. Thank you guys so much for being a good crowd and for asking as many questions as you do. Now, one last thing before we leave, I'm gonna share with you guys a tutorial that should be coming out next week. It's a three-part series, and let me see if I can copy and paste it. And it's on a painterly environment. So if this is something that interests you or you want to kind of get more familiar with these kind of techniques, just know we have all the videos. I'm doing all the marketing, imaging for it now, so it should be out next week. Probably expect a Tuesday or Thursday release. And yeah, so that is the big announcement for Concept Cookie this week. All right. So I want to thank you guys for coming to this live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. and that's Central Time. We usually post the topic an hour or two beforehand, and those will be on our Facebook, our DeviantArt, Tumblr, Twitter pages. Whichever one that you're mainly on, we will probably have an announcement somewhere on there. And just know if you guys have any suggestions, please leave them on one of those social networks, and we'll kind of figure out if that's something we will do for the live stream. And as always, just thank you guys for coming to these. They're a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys learned something during this. So yeah, Joe, any last word?
See you later, guys.
Good. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.